Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're honored to be sitting down with CryptoPop. That is Luis Buenaventura. He's the founder of Bloom. He's also a co-author of the Little Bitcoin book, and he goes by CryptoPop in the particularly NFT space. So thank you so much for joining us today, Luis.
Thanks so much, Justin. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
So we wanted to speak today about NFTs and particularly how people can get involved. So perhaps it makes sense if we start with how you got involved in the NFT space.
Sure. I'll try to keep it short because my crypto journey is very circuitous if you start from ground zero. But over the last couple of years, I've been trying to use some of my art background. So I went to art school, and obviously I'm very passionate about crypto, Bitcoin in particular, and I wanted to use some of that art background to help people kind of just latch on to something about cryptocurrencies that is more familiar and a little bit less intimidating than kind of talking about Merkle trees and blockchains and things like that. So I started the CryptoPop art initiative as a way to kind of combine pop culture iconography with things like, say, the Bitcoin price, or what's happening within the Bitcoin scene. And it was kind of born of 2017, that early bull run. So I've been doing it since March of 2017. Just at the start, it was very simple little cartoons. Marvel superheroes talking about the price, Star Wars characters complaining about how their miners aren't working, or things like that. So very kind of parodical and meant to be humorous, meant to be entertaining, and that's really all. Now, over the last couple of years, I've noticed that there have been more and more of these types of crypto artists. Now, I mean, I'm hardly unique, but I think that what's happened is that not only has the crypto art world kind of, I would say, blossomed beyond just kind of my little parodical pop culture references, but it's blossomed to the point where it's now resembling very much the real world art scene. All of these really, really massively talented artists, both traditional, so some oil painters, some 3D artists, some motion graphics artists, and then people like me, cartoonists, comic book artists, have all started to publish and sell their work on kind of in the crypto space, and that's called NFT. That means non-fungible token, which is a fancy word for kind of how we prove ownership of something. So for example, if I were to create a piece of digital art, all of my art is digital. I do it all on Photoshop or on my iPad or something. So there's no traditional piece of paper. There's no pen on paper. There's no pen and ink, nothing like that. It's purely pixels in a file. When I create that art, I can mint it. So minting means, kind of creating the NFT, creating the token that represents ownership of that art. And it both associates my identity with it. That means I was the person who created it. I created the token. And then if that token is sold to someone, or someone buys it from me, or if I give it to someone, now they have ownership of this digital file. So it's meant to be like a perfect analog of, kind of how selling art in the real world works. If I was an oil painter and I painted oil on canvas, I framed it, I kind of put it up on a gallery, and someone comes up to me and says, hey, I really like this work, I want to buy it, here's some money. The way that I would give that art to someone is by taking the frame off the wall and like giving it to them, right? And they would be able to walk out of the gallery with it. Because that doesn't work so well in the digital art scene, we need to have a way to kind of prove that the ownership has moved. And that is the function of the NFT, that token, which is built on Ethereum. It is a token that represents ownership in something. And in particular, this style is a token that represents ownership in a piece of art that could be created by like someone like me, or some of these other very talented artists and painters and motion graphics artists that are kind of in this space right now. So it's been a very, very interesting industry. And like we can dive into kind of like exactly like how it all works, what the platforms are, what the marketplaces are. But yeah, hopefully that's a nice broad description of where it's at the moment.
Certainly. So I'm curious, when you are surfing the NFT web, to which websites or channels do you most usually surf to?
So there are a couple of what we call marketplaces, and these are specialist websites that are meant to be A, galleries, and then B, retail websites where you can actually buy the art that you're looking at. And then I guess C, they're also a curation venue, because what I've found is that there's actually three very important components to any art community, whether it's physical or online. The first, obviously, is the creators, so the artists. And then there's the buyers, obviously, because it's the buyers that help kind of support the creators. But then there's also a third component, which is the curators. These are, in the traditional art world, these are the people who have galleries. These are people who have museums. These are the influencers in the physical realm. There's a version of that in the digital realm too. They don't necessarily refer to themselves as curators, but that's basically what they're doing. They're looking for young, talented artists that don't really have reach yet. They buy their artwork, they kind of display them in their personal pages within the marketplaces. And then other people who trust these curators, they will buy some of those pieces from them, maybe at some kind of multiple, right? So one of my good friends does this kind of as a side occupation. He's bought a couple of my pieces for a couple $100. He's managed to resell them at maybe $1,000 or so. So he's kind of doubled his money in some cases, sometimes tripled his money. And it's a very interesting kind of exercise, because these curators are basically your most loyal fans in a way, because it is their job, if they believe in what you're doing, if they really like your work, if they think that you've got talent that is going to be much that is underpriced relative to where it is right now, then they will they'll buy your stuff and try to promote it to their own kind of network of fans and followers. So the marketplace that I really like that does this very well is makersplace.com. So they're basically all of the things I've just described happen within Maker's Place. That being said, there's a whole bunch of other venues out there. I would say that possibly the most, in terms of just like overall sales volume, probably a website called niftygateway.com is probably the most kind of like in terms of retail sales volume. I don't think anyone else is right in that range. They're easily the largest at the moment. There's other ones, rareable.com, superrare.co, right? So there's like a whole bunch of marketplaces where artists can, number one, put their stuff up and kind of reach, the audience that's there. But then it also allows curators to kind of explore where the art scene currently is, explore these new artists, find ones they really like, and make some bets, right? Essentially, that's what you're doing. You're based on your own art criteria, your own collection parameters. You can buy something for maybe $50, maybe $100, maybe, I don't know, a couple $100. And then, over time, you will, if you were correct and that artist does continue to grow in his art career, then you will be able to sell it at, kind of many multiples of that. And that's certainly been the case for a lot of these, I would say that there was a massive boom in 2020 for this stuff. And I think that kind of if you read up more about this, you'll see examples of artists who used to be selling pieces at, for a couple $1,000s and now are selling pieces at maybe $100,000. Which again, very much reflects the same way that it works in the art world. The only difference is that because crypto is crypto, the pace at which price discovery happens is so much faster than in the kind of the physical realm. It would take you 10 years to do that as a physical kind of like a painter with oil on canvas, all of that stuff. It would take you like a decade to get to that point. In crypto, it took most people about 10 months to find their stride. And that's just because there's a lot of interest in the space. The money moves very quickly. Decisions are made very fast. And I think that kind of this new hype around it is certainly helping kind of push that forward. I think in the last couple of weeks of December 2020, I think we did like nearly $10 million in sales across the crypto art scene. So definitely getting sizable, I would think.
Art is hard. Making money from art is probably harder. So I'm curious, have you thought about the sorts of business models that crypto through NFTs or otherwise is making possible for artists to explore?
So I guess this probably is best answered by the fact that I am not from the States. So I live in the Philippines. I live in a beach town 4 hours north of the capital. So I'm not even kind of in the center of this country, right? I'm actually like very far removed from the center of this country. Um, However, I'm probably one of the most kind of recognized artist names from this part of the world, um, because there are no borders when you're selling crypto art, or I should say there's no borders when you're selling digital art online. So my buyers are from North America, from Europe, from other parts of Asia. They've messaged me on Twitter. They find me that way, or they find me through the marketplaces, right? Because every time I launch a new series of pieces, a new set of illustrations, there's usually they call it a drop event. So it's like an art drop, right? So you drop some new art, and everyone kind of jumps on to kind of look at it and try to figure out is this going to be something that is going to be massively successful, and then they'll try to buy it as quickly as they can. Typically, like a well-organized art drop, it will sell out in minutes, sometimes seconds. And so I guess that is kind of another thing that you don't see that in the real world, right? The fact that the artist has to travel, let's say, to, I don't know, New York or LA to launch their art event. And I also don't think that all of the stuff gets sold in seconds. It typically will take at least hours or days or maybe weeks to sell out an entire collection. But so I guess that's kind of the biggest kind of difference for me. It's that it allows global participation for people who are in remote locations, but are passionate, as passionate about this stuff as any of the other artists that are kind of more geographically well positioned. And I think that that's such a massive game changer. The people that I'm meeting in the art scene now, very few of them actually come from the places that you would expect. And it is because they have never enjoyed this level of distribution, because they are, like me, to a certain extent, geographically challenged, which is not to say that, I complain about where I live. I mean, I love where I live. But there are some things that it's just not very good at, which is, to say art distribution, not so great here. But kind of these new channels, these online channels, powered by Ethereum, are really changing the game for a lot of artists.
It's interesting because I'm from San Diego, California originally, which is about as close as you can get to a distribution center in the arts and entertainment world. Particularly, I would say that access is available to only limited numbers of people, and many people try to get to the attention of those distribution channels but don't. Now, with the internet, of course, I think that you you yourself in the Philippines enjoyed greater access to potential distribution channels. And I would say, furthermore, that was exacerbated over the last year, especially because people can't really travel. So, in a way, I think that it's almost a perfect storm for artists who maybe aren't from California or New York or Paris,
Mhm.
Mexico City,
For sure.
um, etc. I want to say some up and coming places in all across Asia. I guess what comes to mind would be Hong Kong.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Tokyo. Yeah.
Tokyo, yes,
Things like that.
Tokyo.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but and what's wonderful really is that it's kind of happened organically too. Um, you're correct that the kind of the global pandemic and lockdown has exacerbated, accelerated some of these realizations, right? I mean, people are starting to spend more and more time online, mostly because they don't have a choice. But it's also kind of forced certain behavior changes. The fact that we're doing this interview over Google Meet, for example. All of my meetings are like this now. It used to be that you had to do some face-to-face at some point just because it felt kind of impolite to do the important meetings through Skype or Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. That has completely changed. Now it is considered impolite to do the face-to-face meeting, especially if you're speaking to someone who's maybe a little bit more senior, because they're afraid that they might catch a virus or whatever, and they're trying to be safe. So what everyone does now is just do the Zoom thing, and that's fine. I think that the world changes, and certainly for people who are not in the centers of industry, so the capital cities or whatever, this is a massive advantage, because now our geographic positioning is not a liability anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. It's suddenly been kind of just the playing field has been rebalanced in a way that I don't think anyone was expecting at the start of 2020. And that's happened in the space of 8-9 months maybe, but like it's a massive sea change. And it's not just the art scene, like everywhere across the world, people are rethinking whether or not the things that they used to care about a lot really are that important. Like everyone is rethinking, right? And I don't know. It's I like change, I guess, so I don't find it particularly upsetting, but it's such a massive sea change in the way that we think about things. And I don't think it's over yet. I think we're going to have a lot more rethinking to do, let's just say, over the next year or two.
Yes. So I'm curious now, what opportunities do you believe that crypto have presented to you that you've taken advantage of, and can you kind of talk about that process?
Well, I mean, more broadly, crypto is a career for me. My company, Bloom, so that's a Philippine-based startup. We're a trading desk for cryptocurrencies. I head the trading desk there. Um, I mean, so my businesses wouldn't exist without cryptocurrency. We discovered crypto about 6 years ago, and kind of decided that this is the direction that we want to take. We want to provide Filipinos with safe, secure access to things like Bitcoin, things like Ethereum, um, complete with the necessary education to arm themselves with. Like you can't just sell someone Bitcoin if they don't know what it is, right? There is some education that you need beforehand. That's kind of one of the reasons why I helped author the Little Bitcoin book also. So we wanted to write a book that our parents could read. And obviously, like, my dad knows a little bit about Bitcoin because I won't shut up about it, but I wanted to give him like a little book that he could read maybe over the holidays or something, that that would explain maybe not the technical side of Bitcoin. There are other books for that, but the economic side, the anthropological side, the reasons why your currency continues to devalue, and why is that wrong? Things like that, right? I mean, and these are kind of broader picture questions that you often forget to ask when you are talking about the technical aspects of Bitcoin and why, how it solved the Byzantine generals problem and how it, kind of has done so much for consensus algorithms and things like that. And that's great. And that's totally wonderful. These technical aspects of Bitcoin are important. But I think that for the average senior citizen, like my dad, some of our parents, maybe they don't care so much about that. What they care about is, why is my son so into this stuff? And is it really better than gold? What's the, kind of, where's the thinking at on that? So I mean, there's so many opportunities that have come across that have made themselves known because of cryptocurrency. It's a completely new industry, and it is certainly the root of most of my initiatives, whether it be art, business, or even my personal lifestyle. So yeah, it's been a wild 6 years for me.
What have been the keys to capitalizing on those opportunities?
I would say, well, timing was one, right? Of course. I mean, so I got into crypto in late 2013, early 2014. So timing. So this was like right around the time when it was starting to cross over into this side of the world. So there was finally a little bit of interest over here, although it had been around since way before then in other countries. So timing was one. And then I guess the other thing is hard work, right? Because like, honestly, it's one thing to know that crypto exists. It's another thing entirely to start buying into it or start speculating or start investing. It's hard to, convince people who think that it's just a digital currency for black markets or for kind of, I mean, so if you remember 2013 to 2014 was right around the time that things like Silk Road was making headlines, things like Mount Gox falling apart. Those were the kind of the big headlines. And, kind of it created this aura around Bitcoin that was very dangerous. And so we were fighting against that for sure. And you have to persevere. You have to persevere. You have to figure out a way to sustain your business even throughout kind of these long crypto winters. So I've lived through a couple of them now. So 2015 to 2016 was a longish crypto winter, and then we had that again in 2018 to 2019. We're certainly well recovered since then, but yeah, kind of the kind of discipline that you need in order to keep your business alive during these long winters is very different, I would think, from kind of more traditional businesses that are not as seasonal. And certainly our seasons are quite long. They have, sometimes it feels like you get like 1 year of crypto summer for 2 years of crypto winter. So you got to make all your money in crypto summer, right? And then you have to squirrel some of it away to make sure that you survive the down times. And I don't know that there's a lot of industries out there where the seasonality plays into success so much. But the good news is that we're currently in a summer. And I was not sure how long of a wait it would be this time, but it feels like we're there now. And that brings with it all of the excitement of the past couple crypto summers. So we'll see things like the decentralized finance revolutions, the DeFi revolution is what they're calling it. We'll see that. We'll see NFT art. We'll see all sorts of new blockchain projects, as is kind of what has happened in every preceding version of this summer. And then you'll see the price of Bitcoin skyrocket, which we have already to a certain extent, and we're probably going to see again over the next couple of months. So it's all happening again. We need to be ready for all of that renewed excitement and all of that, all of these newcomers who are going to be coming into the space asking very fundamental questions. How does Bitcoin work? What is this Ethereum thing? What's a token? Things like that, right? So we're positioning ourselves to be those educators, as well as those people who will, we call that, provide that liquidity for those newcomers.
And there's so many spokes on this kind of crypto wheel. that we can connect with the so-called noobs in many different ways. So I'm curious, for those artists who will be discovering crypto and coming into the space, can you kind of discuss your influences as an artist, and then also that aha moment you had when you could marry art and crypto?
So I've always been a comic book guy. I grew up with comic books. Like I grew up in the 80s, by the way. So I'm not as young as some of the other crypto artists here. So the historical references that I sometimes make in the comic book scene predate a lot of the Marvel comic universe stuff that you see on the big screen, right? So anyway, yeah. So I've always been a comic book guy. That is very, very it's in my DNA at this point, and you'll see that in all of my art. It's very much like it was pulled off of the page of Marvel comic book from the 80s or 90s. And the aha moment for me, I guess it was, I would say that so the thing about this type of artwork, it matters very much if people find it entertaining. Um, it does, like if you can make something that people find humorous, or or they find it cool, or they are inspired by it enough that they will actually give you feedback. That's how you know that you're onto something. And I think that for me, so I have one little quick story about my very early days as CryptoPop. So 2017 was the year that I was doing a lot of back and forth trips between the Philippines and the States. So San Francisco kind of had a lot of Bitcoin meetups. It had a lot of crypto people that I wanted to meet with and talk to, possibly do some business deals with. So I was doing a lot of time flying back and forth, and I made this very, very simple crypto pop illustration. This was the first couple of months of crypto pop. So I made this very simple illustration of a Bitcoin gingerbread man, kind of the gingerbread man that you see from the movie Shrek, that really snarky little guy. But he was kind of a Bitcoin themed gingerbread man. And his legs were running off of him because they had taken on lives of their own, and they were like Litecoin and Ethereum and XRP. So it was kind of like a little joke about how the Bitcoin market share at the time was kind of starting to get away from it, right? So Bitcoin was no longer 90% of the crypto scene. It was becoming 70% or 60% of the crypto scene, because there were all of these other altcoins that were coming about. Anyway, so I made this piece of art, and then I just put it up on my website. I knew nothing about marketing or promotion. I just thought it was funny. So I put it out there, whatever. Now, one day I'm in SF, I go to a Bitcoin meetup, and I see the artwork on somebody's shirt. And he was saying he didn't even know who the artist was. He just saw it on Twitter and he liked it, and he printed it out on his shirt. And he thought it was funny, so he wore it to the Bitcoin meetup. And that was the moment for me when I realized that, like, so not only did someone like it enough that they actually kind of downloaded it, went to the trouble of making a shirt out of it, but there's something saleable about this thing, given all of the steps that he had to do in order to make that happen, right? He had to do all of that stuff himself. I could have been selling that myself if I had known that anyone would be willing to pay for it. I could have put it up on Threadless or any of these other marketplaces where you can dynamically real-time generate a shirt with your own designs on it. So anyway, I guess that was for me my not very short story, but it is it was kind of the moment for me that I realized that, yeah, okay, there is something here, because clearly there are people who are passionate enough about this stuff that they will go through some very serious logistical hoops in order to put that artwork on merchandise that they can own. And that's when I started to really take it seriously, I would think.
Can you walk us through those logistical steps and how one might
Well,
navigate those?
Well, I mean, if you were an artist like me and you wanted to put your stuff on, say, a shirt or a mug or any of these things, right? So the first step is really just Threadless. So Threadless.com, possibly one of the biggest of all of the marketplaces that do this. So they are both a production facility a logistics facility, and a marketplace. So, some people will just hang out on the threadless.com homepage and look for interesting t-shirt designs and just buy those, the stuff that they like. If you're a more focused artist like me, I mean, I sell to a very niche audience, right? You have to be a crypto fan in order to like my stuff, because otherwise you don't get any of the jokes. So I put up my own little threadless store. They allow artists and creators to have their own little storefronts. So I do that with some of my artwork too. So I put it on a t-shirt. I upload the file. I design the shirt. I pick the colors, pick the style. It's not just a normal t-shirt. You can do hoodies, you can do caps, you can do practically anything that you can print on. And then you just put a price on it, right? So Threadless itself will charge you, the artist, for the cost of the materials. So call it like $9 in costs. And then everything on top of that, that's yours, right? So if you sell a shirt for like $18, $19, then you make whatever the difference is. And they take care of everything else. They take care of actually mailing it to the customer. They actually take care of that customer support journey, so that you can focus on just being a creator. So that's another avenue, I think, that will work pretty well for certain types of people. I've found that for me, my work is, I find that kind of just selling my work as digital pieces, kind of the way that I've described earlier through makersplace.com, that has worked for me better than kind of selling it as merchandise. And I think the difference is that I'm just not a very good marketer. I think that maybe that's kind of the bottom line there. The thing about marketers, the thing about the thing about selling merchandise is that you need to have a marketer's brain. You need to know, kind of how to promote the stuff, and kind of you spend time, basically doing a lot of hype building, a lot of kind of sales promotions, things like that. I just don't have the cycles. I think I don't have enough time to think about it that way. So the reason why I am much better kind of in the NFT art version of all this is because that doesn't really require a lot of hype building. It still does a little bit, of course. I don't have to be, I don't have to put my marketer hat on. I can just put my artist hat on and just talk about it. Talk about it on Twitter, talk about it on Facebook. I only need 1 or 2 buyers. I don't need, in the case of like selling t-shirts, I don't have to sell 1,000 shirts. I can sell 1 piece, and oftentimes make more money than if I sold, 100 shirts. My last few kind of digital art pieces were auctioned off at like $1,500, $1,600 US. And that was like a single piece. Over the last couple of months, I've made maybe a couple dozen ETH from various art sales. And those went to maybe a few dozen buyers. I didn't have to speak to 100 buyers. I actually didn't have to speak to any buyers. They found me through the marketplace. They liked it. They paid Ethereum or dollars for it. And that was it. So it was actually a little bit easier than kind of a more traditional merchandise-oriented business play.
Luis, what are your strengths?
I think that my strengths are probably the fact that I have the aptitude to try and learn a whole bunch of different things. So apart from having a trading desk business over here in the Philippines, I'm also a programmer. So, and that's kind of part of the reason why I was so passionate about Bitcoin back in the early days. So I understood what it was doing on a code level, which is kind of different from the way other people have come into it now. I mean, a lot of them will think about it like either as libertarians or just speculative investors, right? They talk about price action, or they talk about censorship resistance. my appreciation of it is a little bit deeper just because I understood the code that it was built on top of. So I guess there's that. So like there's a couple of different things that I am like at a professional level at. So programming, I guess writing, I've published 2 books now. And then the art thing, obviously kind of a big part of what I do also. So that's like 3 things. And I can very easily kind of marry those 3 things. I mean, I guess you could also add business skill, business development know-how into that as well. So I can kind of bring all those things together as necessary in order to do new things, right? So with the Little Bitcoin book, for example, I did all of the artwork for that, and then we walked it through the process of publication, marketing, all of that stuff. So and then we figured out the commercials. So like I had a lot of stuff to bring to bear in order to make that happen because I had a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. So kind of putting it all together is a little bit easier. I didn't have to learn the basics of supply chain management because I already kind of knew some of that stuff just from the other businesses that I'd done. So I think it's like I wouldn't say that I'm world class at like any of these things necessarily, but I've got strong knowledge domains in a lot of these things, so it's workable for sure. And it's certainly enough to start kickstart a small art career or things like that. And I think that's kind of my primary that's probably where I'm strongest, having a lot of different areas of knowledge that I can draw from.
Could you discuss like starting a art career and what people need to know about that? And I'm curious also, I mean, I might need to have you on another time to talk about how you went down the trading path, but perhaps
Sure.
for continuity's sake, it makes sense if we focus in on your art career.
Yeah. So I can only speak really about the NFT art career because that's what I kind of know very well. I wouldn't be able to give anyone advice about like the real world physical stuff because I've never been into it. I will say that the one thing that you need to do if you want to get started, if you are an artist already, and then you want to move into this digital realm, the first thing I would do, get a Twitter account, get online, start talking to other artists. And maybe that's the only thing you need to do in the beginning. Just, get into these art conversations on Twitter because that is the primary place that these types of relationships are built at the moment. I started that way. I try to make sure that, kind of, even if I'm not talking about my own art, I'm talking about other people's art. So, at the start, you just amplify, you promote other people's work that you like. Be a curator first, maybe. That's free, right? I mean, you don't even have to necessarily buy anyone's art. You just like help them promote it by retweeting it or commenting on it or something. And that's generally the way you're supposed to get started with anything. Like if you think about it from a social media angle, show interest in other people. I mean, that's the social part of social media, right? So show interest in other people, and they will eventually show interest in you. It does promote reciprocity, and that's what you're looking for. And once you start putting out your own art, publishing your own art, pay attention to what people say. If they are not saying anything, that is the worst possible type of feedback because ambivalence is what you get by default on the internet. It means no one is watching, right? So whether or not they hate it or they like it, it's less important because what you don't want is them to ignore it. And that's why you spend time kind of building up rapport first with kind of the other players in the scene, the people who have been there a little bit longer than you. Build up that rapport so that they know that you exist. And then you start publishing stuff slowly. Don't do your best stuff yet. Start with some of the stuff that you're just kind of middling with, and then see what's happening, right? And really pay attention to whether or not people are paying attention to you. I think that's the most important first step for a lot of artists. They think that I would think that a lot of young artists, they always think that it's like if my art is really good, people will eventually find me. That's not true on the internet. unfortunately. It's not true in real life either. You could be the most popular artist, the most talented artist in the world, but people might never know who you are just because you didn't take the time to, knock on doors. There is some aspect of this job that is literally just letting people know that you exist. And that's, you can't do without it.
You mentioned earlier that perhaps marketing wasn't your strength, but I think there's actually a a similar approach that should be taken, in my opinion, today when it comes to both content marketing, at least, and art, and that is more is more is better. So what I mean
Sure.
by that is, like, let's say I'm trying to build a brand, for instance. I might start a podcast, interview experts, transcribe those podcasts, and then have potentially dozens of pieces of content for the internet. And when it
Right.
comes to art, I make music, but what I
Okay.
fail to do is what I think I ought to do, and everyone, which is release a song a day. If I'm able to write a song, draw a picture, write a poem, write a short story per day, then do that and put that out there.
Sounds incredibly challenging. I don't know much about music, but like,
Don't worry about the end results. Have fun with it. You know, like that you said that you want to maybe save some of your best work for later and perhaps build on that and make something special out of it. But I think in the meantime, while you're working on that stuff in the background, that just putting out something, whether it's a ditty type song or line drawing.
right. Yeah. No, I mean, obviously practice is a really, really big part of this stuff. And I would think that if you have the time to focus on, kind of your creative efforts, that is a luxury that very few people have. So you will just naturally become a better artist purely because you spend so much time on it sometimes, and you just get better. But I mean, that being said, you do have to pay attention to feedback. You can't just keep doing, you can't just keep putting it out there. Feedback is very important. You don't necessarily have to listen to all of it, but you should, just don't do it in a vacuum. I would think you need to understand that. Well, me personally, the reason why I'm into this stuff is because there are messages that I want to convey to the world, to people who view this work. And so it matters to me if they view it, and then B, if they get it, if they get the message that I'm trying to convey. And if they don't, what do I glean from that? Well, I mean, maybe the joke was too complex, or maybe the visual style was just off-putting, or maybe I didn't think through the visualization enough, and now people don't understand what the heck I meant, right? So yeah, feedback certainly matters. It matters a lot to me because I want people to understand fully what I'm trying to say with these illustrations. So yeah, practice, feedback, that loop, super important for every creator.
Can you tell us a little bit about your businesses currently and what you are up to?
So Bloom is, again, like a trading desk for cryptocurrencies here in the Philippines. We've got licensing. We're regulated by the government to do this stuff. So we're about as legitimate as you can possibly get in this space. 2020, banner year for us. Weirdly, like, it was our best year, which is an awful thing to say given kind of the global situation. But like, in terms of our business volumes, I don't think we did more volume in a single year than any of the previous years. So 2020 was our best year. We're thinking that 2021 is probably going to top that, and it's mostly because of this sea change in kind of behavior, right? So people are starting to look more and more online for opportunities. Some of those opportunities are as simple as looking for something new to speculate on. And then I guess also 2020 was the year that PayPal finally embraced Bitcoin and Ethereum directly inside their wallets, right? So all of that stuff in the news has certainly changed more traditional investors' minds about whether or not the whole crypto scene is worth investing in. That's helped us phenomenally. And then obviously the price itself, right? I mean, new Bitcoin high in the early days of 2021. That is a massive signal for a lot of first-time investors. To them, they see a $40,000 Bitcoin and they say, okay, it's finally stable enough for me to wade in, right? And that is only going to keep going, I think. I mean, we're not at 40,000 right now. As at the time of this recording, I think we're more like 31, 32,000. But I think that's natural profit taking. That you have to take profits at some point, and that's what's happened over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, but generally speaking, for us, we're just gearing up for an even hotter 2021, and we're just making sure that we can scale to meet all of that demand. So yeah, so a little less crypto art for me, I think, over the next couple of months, just because I'm spending a lot of time growing the business. But that's fine. I like kind of going back and forth between these two areas that I'm really passionate about. It's still all crypto underneath. It's just that, I guess, with the art stuff, it's one side of your brain, and then with the business stuff, it's the other side of your brain. Whichever, I can never remember if it's left or right, and I'm not even sure if that's true. But yeah, it's one of those.
I think getting both of those spheres to work together in concert is the
For sure.
key.
For
But I'm
sure.
curious, what's like the biggest challenge that you face in growing this business?
I would say, well, I would echo the challenges of all the other crypto companies around the world. Regulation is the single biggest challenge. We're lucky that here in the Philippines there is a regulatory licensing framework that you can get. So in the States, they've got the BIT license in New York. That's kind of the primary license that you would need if you want to be able to, operate in New York State. There are other areas in the world that have similar licenses. But anywhere that doesn't have a license, you're always in these what we call regulatory gray areas where you're not quite sure if what you are doing is going to be shut down by the government at some point, or you're going to get fined by the government at some point. You're always operating kind of with a lot of question marks. Now, that being said, once you are licensed and regulated, you must remain compliant. So there's a whole bunch of rules that you need to kind of stick with. And that's the name of the game. Unfortunately, if you're a financial service provider, you can't just do this stuff without regulatory oversight. It's just not possible. And if you want banks to continue to give you access to banking infrastructure, you have to be legitimate. You have to be licensed and you have to be compliant. And that's kind of a necessary, I don't want to call it a necessary evil, but it is a necessity of this space that, if you want to get big, if you want to reach, 100,000 customers, you want to reach 1 million customers, you got to be able to embrace the existing regulations. Otherwise, they are going to shut you down at some point. And so that's kind of negotiating that has been kind of the biggest challenge for us over the last 5 years of our company's life.
What's unique for Bloom about serving the market there in the Philippines?
So I would argue that we're probably the most community driven of the crypto companies here. So apart from kind of all the other stuff I've been talking about, we do a weekly show on Tuesday nights called the Bloomcast. So we do that live stream on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. And we get a couple hundred people watching on the live stream, maybe 1,000 people or so watching kind of the recorded versions of it. And we spend a lot of time taking questions from the community, right? So the Philippines, like many other developing countries, a lot of the newcomers here, their first forays into crypto are because there was some kind of crypto Ponzi scheme that was trying to sell them fake Bitcoin or trying to sell them fake Ethereum. So they'll usually bring these schemes to us. They'll ask us about it on the show, and then we'll pick apart why it's not real. We'll tell them what to look for. We'll advise them, well, I mean, mostly we'll just tell them not to do it, right? Don't put your money in this because it's not real. There are a couple of very legitimate venues in the Philippines where you can buy Bitcoin or Ethereum. Here are those venues. I mean, we don't just talk about ourselves. We also talk about the other players in the space. And then if they want to ask us about certain blockchain projects, we'll try to answer that to kind of the degree that we have expertise in them. So we spent a lot of time doing that. So I would think that we're kind of the most visible of all of the brands over on this side of the world, primarily because of the show that we do, and we spend a lot of time talking to the community over here. I mean, we like to say that we're also kind of the cheapest place to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I think that we are 90% of the time. But I think that you can't just compete on price. I don't think that's enough. I think that kind of having a presence where you are actually helping educate people, answering questions, interacting, and you're not just selling them a product. I think that's very important, and I think that's our key differentiator at the moment.
I like your idea for the Tuesday show. It sounds super entertaining. It's like Shark Tank except for scams.
Yeah.
So it's like
yeah,
Scam
yeah.
Shark. It's like Scam Shark.
Yes, it is. I mean, we're pretty, like, sometimes we get pretty brutal with there's some very obvious scams out there where you don't even have to spend a lot of time. You don't even have to go beyond their homepage to know that these are scams. But if you're a first timer, you don't know what's true, right? You don't have a sense of what's true. You don't even have a baseline. So us emphasizing what the baselines should be, i.e., if this project is telling you that they can double your money every week, yeah, that's a scam for sure. But people don't have that baseline. They think that crypto can actually do that. I mean, that being said, yes, there are times when crypto will double your money in under a week. That happens in DeFi a lot. But then you could also lose that same money the next week, right? I mean, that's kind of that's the problem with all of these stuff. And newcomers, they don't have their investor hat on yet. They don't even know what that looks like yet. So you need to kind of tell them what the baseline assumptions are, what the fundamental knowledge is in order to start making these small investments. We're not talking large amounts of money here, like we're talking hundreds of dollars maybe, but I mean, to some people, that's a lot of money. So we want to make sure that we respect kind of the wallets of the people that come to us with these questions. Not everyone has thousands of dollars to burn on speculative investments. So yeah, I think it's an important thing to have.
Do you have any advice for people who are looking to get into the NFT space or budding entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out how to build a business?
I mean, well, the first thing is, watch and learn first, because I think that the NFT space, even from the last 18 months, is so massively different from where it was. I think that, a lot of people who have heard of NFTs, they probably heard about it in 2018 because of CryptoKitties. Like, we're so far evolved from that point now that it's an unrecognizable industry. Like, CryptoKitties was like phase 0 of this stuff. I guess we're kind of fully in phase 1 now, but I can't even tell you what phase 2 might look like. I think that the most obvious way to make money from it at the moment is to be a curator/buyer. Just buy up a couple of pieces that you like and have a spending budget. You don't have to spend like thousands of dollars on something. Just spend like, I don't know, if your max is $100 per piece, then you look around in the marketplace for stuff that are, kind of priced in that range. And then see what it takes to, kind of either resell that stuff or see what it takes for the artist, the person who created the work that you bought, see how they're doing, how they're pushing their art career, how they're promoting themselves, stuff like that, and maybe lend your voice to that. Those are kind of very basic, simple steps. A lot of this stuff is really just navigating social relationships. It's not rocket science, but it does take persistence, and I think that you need to be open to trying a bunch of different things. And yeah, I mean, I advocate for just trying things. Try something. Try to do it with the least amount of financial impact on yourself as possible, so that if it turns out that it was not a great little punt, then it's fine. You're not out thousands of dollars. You're out maybe $100. So kind of do small things, small experiments, but also keep at it. Don't expect results in like weeks. I think that it will take you any normal person will take at least a few months to hit their stride with anything like this. So at least have it in your head that you want to give this a shot for like maybe 2 quarters of the year. Um, buy a few things, try to sell a few things, and see where it's going. Yeah, and then pay attention to how the industry is evolving, because like crypto, it is evolving at a pace that is frightening and exciting at the same time. So depending on your personality, you're either very, very frightened or you're very, very excited. I guess they're not mutually exclusive emotions. You can be both at the same time. And I often feel that way when I observe the way that the crypto scene has evolved over the last 6 years. It is a frightening, exciting, wonderful thing.
And I'd say it's in all of our interest to, when it comes to crypto, deaden those emotions, dampen those emotions as much as possible, because really applying logic and reasoning to our actions in this space, in any financial space, and indeed in life in general, is key to us making consistently sound decisions over time. And I guess I feel a little lucky in a way, because I entered the precious metal space back in 2009. Silver was like $9. It would soon run to $50. And then gold was $900 or less, and it would soon run to just shy of 2000. I think $1920 was the point at which the market reversed. And from then to today, if there's one thing I'm always working at, but I'm trying to keep in mind, is that my emotions are probably the worst thing that I could go on at any time in this crazy wild ride that is crypto. And I mean, just think about what happened in December. The price went from, what was it, like 8 to 10K? Now it's
Yep.
at 32K after
Yeah.
peaking above 40K.
Yeah.
We can't let that FOMO, which all of us feel, even those of us who aren't wed to our emotions in these situations, feel,
Mm-hmm.
control our lives, you know,
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
and, and lead us to make silly decisions. So now, do you have any comments in closing, Luis?
So, I mean, we've been talking about the NFT art space for most of this hour, and I think that like cryptocurrency, it is a thing that needs to be approached both with curiosity and with caution. I think that a lot of these people who are coming in right now, they kind of just fling themselves headlong into these things. But you have to remember that it's in its infancy. It's not mature. It's certainly not the precious metal space. It's very, very volatile, and because of its volatility, it attracts people who are kind of extremely passionate, extremely risk taking with their behaviors and their mindsets. And you have to kind of discount that when you talk to people about it. So obviously, I'm very passionate about this stuff because I've been in it for several years, and I'm in it on many different levels. So I like crypto as just its currency and money characteristics. I also like it because of certain other aspects, though. The Ethereum blockchain allows things like NFTs to exist, and I'm very into that. But all of this stuff should be approached with caution. I think that we don't know where it's going. I can tell you that I feel personally that it's definitely got legs, at least from the money standpoint, like the money problems the Bitcoin is attempting to solve. It's looking like it's got some serious legs on it, and it looks like a lot of institutional money is pouring into Bitcoin. Kind of publicly traded companies are buying massive amounts of Bitcoin right now and adding them to their treasury and their balance sheets. And that is a thing that's been going on for the last half of 2020 till now. And I think that you know, just paying attention to kind of where the community is going, where the industry is going. That is probably the most important thing that people can do at the moment. Just spend the time, do your homework, do your research, do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. Double check everything I've just said. And yeah, but be curious, but be cautious. That's it. Those are my final words on that.
And where can people find you?
So on Twitter, I am at Hello Luis, HELLOLUIS. I talk about my company Bloom. I talk about my new art drops. I talk about the crypto scene in general over there. And then if you want to actually go to where I'm selling my art, makersplace.com/cryptopop. That's the main gallery page for my work.
We've been honored today to sit down and speak with Luis Buenaventura. He is the founder of Bloom, an OTC desk and firm out of the Philippines. He also is known in the NFT space as CryptoPop. Thank you so much, Luis, for joining us today, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, Justin. Everyone keep hodling.